Hello everyone, welcome to this video discussion on the linguistic perspective of computer-mediated communication. As what I discussed in the previous video lecture, there are three perspectives that we need to look at. And first of these three is the linguistic perspective. Now, for us to really understand the linguistic perspective of CMC, or computer-mediated communication, we shall be tackling different research works, seminal research works to be specific, conducted by scholars before, for us to really understand how computer-mediated communication is, linguistically speaking. So, we have here a study conducted by these two researchers here entitled Electronic Language, a New Variety of English. This one is a computer-mediated communication research. Now, the goal of this research is to find out if there are grammatical differences between CMC and other forms of spoken and written language. So this one is a bit complicated because there is this contrasting element wherein the researchers looked at the differences between the language or electronic language found in computer-mediated discourses or communication and other forms of spoken and written language which were used primarily as the corpora for this study. Now, this paper focused on the language people use on bulletin board systems, or we call it as BBS, also called as the electronic language. So, electronic language was labeled as the language people use on the BBS. Now, the subject matter of BBS covers a vast expanse ranging from discussions of art to political debates and personal advice columns. Now, if you are to compare it with modern social media platforms, we could consider that it is somewhat like Reddit or Twitter, okay, or even Facebook post threads. These are organized to conferences identified by an appropriate title, which gather all the messages with a common theme. So there is categorization involved in a bulletin board system. For example, in one BBS, all messages concerning advice on personal matters have been grouped under the conference title Dear Sue. So there is somewhat like one label for each category or we term it as conference in BBS. So that's how the interface looks like in a BBS. Electronic language is characterized by a set of situational constraints which sets it apart from other varieties of English. Now, when we talk about situational constraints, these are somehow the limitations as to the use of language. For example, in modern social media platforms that we have, let's say Twitter, there is this situational constraint wherein people could not post lengthy tweets on Twitter, right? Because of the maximum number of words allowed. So that's one situational constraint. Messages delivered electronically are neither spoken nor written in the conventional sense of these words. That is why people use shortcuts, people use slangs or contractions, or oftentimes people also use, for example, in modern communication, virtual or digital communication, people use memes, hashtags, they also use emoticons, emojis, and other multimodal texts or semiotic systems available on any social media platform. There is an easy interaction of participants and alternation of topics typical of some varieties of spoken English. So as what I mentioned, because there is homogeneity in terms of people interacting on social media or on online platforms, then there is also a mixture of the varieties of English spoken. However, they cannot be strictly labeled as spoken messages since the participants neither see nor hear each other. So it's just plain interaction on virtual or digital platforms. Messages are entered in the BBS chronologically. So there is time indication there. There's also date indication. But participants identify the message to which they're referring. So if you want to respond to a preceding message, then you could also do that one in a BBS. This makes it possible to keep track of the thread of a conference. Well, similarly, it's like Facebook, wherein you could reply to a comment that you wish to respond to, okay? Or even in Twitter, right? A participant who wishes to refer to an earlier message uses the same subject header which appeared in the earlier message. Although messages can be sent to a specific addressee, Everyone on a BBS has access to all messages. None is definitely private. The participants come from widely varying backgrounds, and there are no obvious restrictions of age. Anyone old enough to use a computer can have access to the boards. So anyone could actually be part or be engaged in the exchanges of virtual or electronic language. Now, because electronic language has unique situational features, it seems reasonable to assume that it embodies a distinctive set of linguistic features as well. Because of the different situational constraints and other limitations with the use of language electronically, there is this distinctive set of linguistic features. But the question here is, what is this distinctive set of linguistic features and what is it composed of? So that's something that we need to understand also as we course through the study of electronic language. So to better understand or digest rather the contents of electronic language, one of the widely accepted frameworks that could be used is that of Bieber's. It's called a multidimensional multi-feature or MDMF framework. It is a descriptive framework which helps us understand or describe the contents, okay, the structure of the conversation, the different linguistic features present therein. So for example, when we talk about the participants who are involved in the electronic language or exchange of electronic language, what are the roles? So is the role of this person an addressor or an addressee or just mainly an audience? Okay. What are the personal characteristics? Is there diversity with the characteristics? What are the group characteristics? So for example, this one is coming from the social group and then another one is coming from a social group. So when they exchange electronic languages online, then there could be differences, not only with the linguistic features, but also with the manner they exchange information. You could also look at the relationship, okay? Relations among participants. Are there social relations? Okay, is there equality with the relations involved in a conversation or in the online exchange of information? Are there any personal relations? Okay, what is the degree of shared interest? Is it high or is it low? Are there people not totally involved in the exchange of discourses? What is the degree of shared knowledge? Does everyone know the topic being talked about? Okay, you could also look at the setting. Where does it happen? Is it in terms of physical context? You could look at whether or not it's using the desktop, okay, own desktop of the participant. What's the temporal context? Any time of day or night? Because, for example, you might be seeing that one participant is not that active, and then it's already nighttime. So definitely, you could assume or interpret that that person is no longer interested in taking part in the exchange of conversation because it's already evening, or maybe that person is already sleepy. So you could also look at the setting because it may also have an effect on the linguistic features present in electronic language. Okay, other factors that you could look at: where does it happen, purpose, the social evaluation, how do people react, the relations of participants to the text, was it planned or unplanned, was it spontaneous or not, things like this. And what was the primary channel? Was it keyboarding, typing, okay, or using mobile phones, or using any other gadgets? Okay, how? So that's how you analyze it using Bieber's MDMF. Now, one thing that is very crucial here is to make sure that you look at the conversation or the online platform holistically. Because, yes, you might be focusing on linguistic features only, but for you to really understand the choice of these linguistic features by the speakers or the people involved in the exchange of information, you need to look at it holistically. Consider also the non-linguistic cues present, okay? Those that might have a big contribution for you to really understand or to have a complete, correct interpretation of the text you are analyzing. Electronic language corpus is also another concept that we need to understand. Once a descriptive framework had been selected, so for example, if you choose Bieber's MDMF, the next task was the compilation of an adequate corpus of electronic language. So here, the researchers chose the corpus, okay, the ELC. The corpus consists of two subsets. One is offline, consisting of 90,075 words, and the other is composed of 115,618 words. Offline messages are pre-written and can be positively identified with the presence of a tag inserted after the last line of a message, which indicates that an electronic mail reader was used for that one. Okay, so just take a look at the corpora used in this study. So if we are to look at the findings, you could see here that there are different categorizations for the conferences. So discourses may be about chit-chats, current events, science, science fiction, finance, film and music, photo and cooking, medical, and sports. And then you could also take a look at this one, offline, messages, authors' words, and then we also have the others, okay, the other set of corpus used in the study. And then in this table, you could also see the number, okay, of words, okay, the number of authors involved, and the number of messages per conference, per specific category. Okay. Now, if you look at table 3, this one is an extract from the comparative statistics for Beaver's corpus and the ELC, which was considered as the other subset here. So you can see here linguistic features. You might want to look at the past tense, okay, the adverbials relating to time, the pronouns. Which pronoun is really dominant? Is it first, third, or second person? Are there any agentless passives present? Okay, the use of that as a verb complement or as a relative object position. And then we also have sentence relatives. The use of prepositions even could also be one interesting topic that you might want to consider. But with the bulk of data that we have, if we are to consider all of these linguistic features, it may take us a lot of time before we can finish the analysis. But with the advancement of technology, it has become easier for us to understand, to interpret, and draw conclusions from various computer-generated data, okay, because of the availability of different resources that we have. So if you look at the different dimensions, you might want to consider first the textual dimensions. So since we are dealing with linguistic features, you might want to consider whether or not the discourse is informational or is it involved production. Okay, is it, for example, one way? Does it aim at giving information only, or is there an exchange, an engagement among participants? Well, that's involved production. Second one, we have non-narrative versus narrative. So you could also look at the linguistic features between the two. And then we also have situation dependent, wherein words used would have to be understood first based on the context, so that you could really understand the meaning of the expressions used. Or it could also be explicit, wherein at first look, you could already identify the meaning. And then you also have overt expression of persuasion. If it's more on the persuasive side of the discourses, you could also look at that one. Or you might want to determine the non-abstract and abstract information shared in the discourses through, of course, linguistic features. And then, are there any online informational elaborations involved as well? Now, on one hand, we also have the situational features. You could look at the degree of common interests and shared knowledge. Is everyone in the, let's say, online platform really that involved in terms of exchanging discourses? Okay. Second one, what's the primary purpose for communicating? Is it to inform, to entertain? It depends on the purpose for communicating to people in the digital or the virtual world. And lastly, what's the speech situation? So you have to identify who are the addressors, who are the addressees, who are the audience members, because that could also help us understand the linguistic features. Perhaps the speaker, let's say the one addressing the people, might have chosen these linguistic features for the benefit of the audience. So when we understand and carefully determine who the audience members are, then it's easier for us to interpret the usage of such linguistic features in the text. Okay? Now, to summarize everything here, situational features have a significant impact on the linguistic makeup of electronic language. Because of the different constraints or the contexts used, then people use also appropriate words so that they could channel the message effectively and clearly at the same time. Second one, participants have a relationship with the text. Let's admit it. When you are delivering, let's say, or when you are typing something and then you are sending it to people involved in the conversation, in the digital conversation, you are having a relationship with the text in a way that you are contextualizing it as if you are speaking to them. Okay? It's just that it's typed and it has certain algorithms, computer algorithms, that we could no longer understand given the situation. And because of that, there are also variations in electronic language. So the electronic language used by this culture might be totally different from the electronic language used by another culture. Okay, so that's something that we also need to consider. Gender also has a role in shaping the linguistic and rhetorical features of messages posted on computer-mediated discussions. There are certain features which really project the gender identity of a person. Okay, the choice of words, semiotic systems involved, or even the multimodality. Okay, and when you talk about multimodality, maybe the features within that multimodality could also point out to the gender identity of a person. Computer-mediated communication has a specific discourse complexity. So if we are to understand spoken or written discourse, by looking at their complexity, then it's also fair to say that computer-mediated communication has its own complexity, and we can only identify it once we look at the discursive complexities present in them. And lastly, computer-mediated communication can draw the line between written and spoken forms of communication. You know why? Because there are features of computer-mediated communication there are features of written communication which are present in CMC. Same goes with that of spoken in nature. So it's like a hybrid form of communication. It's a combination of both written and spoken. It's multimodal, generally speaking. And so it's very important that you consider holistically all the features present in a computer-mediated communication. Because again, there are certain algorithms that we could not understand without further study. So we need to scrutinize every element or feature present in the computer-mediated communication for us to really appreciate the process of the conduct of this research. Okay? So if you have, I hope my discussion was clear. And if you have any question, you may post them or you may post it on the open forum, and then later I'll answer each one of them. So if you do not have any questions, then thank you very much for watching this video discussion, and please wait for the next video upload about the other perspectives of computer-mediated communication. Once again, thank you very much.